Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, hockey fans. It is a crisp 5 degrees Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit in a cloudy and gray Bridgewater, Nova Scotia today. My name is Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to the Saturday, May 7th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. Now, after some technological scares early this morning, I'm glad to say that we are back up and running. I was kind of scared we'd have to put the podcast on hiatus for a couple of days, but it looks like we have got everything under control now. Only had one game in the league last night. That was Tampa Bay and the Islanders Game 4. Let's get right into it. We are a little pressed for time today. So the game opens up again, Tampa Bay and the Islanders, Game 4 of this series. The Lightning win this game 2-1 in overtime in Brooklyn to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Shots in the game, 28-24 for the Islanders, and the game opens up with really some exchanged chances amidst a lot of early hitting. Very physical beginning to this game. It was an excellent start to the game. A couple of chances each way, but nothing super dangerous. Blunden blunders by taking an early roughing penalty against Ryan Strome. Blunden is now in the box for the Lightning, and just 4 minutes and 20 seconds into the first period, Nooch, we have a power play goal for the Islanders. It's Kyle Okposo, his second goal of these playoffs. Kuhlman and Nielsen drawing the assists. It's a tic-tac-toe play. Okposo wrists it home behind Ben Bishop, and it's 1-0 for the Islanders. After that 1-0 goal, the Islanders maintain their pressure. They get 9 of the next 11 attempts on goal. Now, 5 of those 9 attempts were blocked by Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay definitely doing what they need to do, getting in the areas, getting in the shooting lanes, blocking those shots, keeping them away from the net, down 1-0. Ryan Callahan takes the ever-rare double minor for roughing. You don't see that every day. 6 Islander attempts on that power play. Only 2 of them get through to Ben Bishop. Again, more blocks, a couple of misses there. Tampa Bay doing what they need to do, down 1-0 in the game and at risk of this series tying up. Nikita Kucherov opens the second period by laying out a monstrous hit on Kyle Okposo. Really nice hit. Okposo had his head down. It was a hard hit. No penalty on the play. It was one of those sort of borderline hits where it looks like contact was made with the head, but Okposo also kind of tucked his head into his shoulders, so he kind of put himself in a vulnerable position there. He gets hit hard. He did have his head down. No penalty on the play. Casey Cizikas shortly afterwards takes a tripping penalty on Andre Palat. The Lightning only managed 3 shot attempts on their power play. 2 of them get through to Thomas Greiss. No damage on the Lightning power play. The Islanders do that thing that we've been talking about all playoffs. They're physical, and their physicality breeds scoring chances. The Lightning are still blocking most attempts that are heading towards their own net. There are a couple that are getting through, a couple of good scoring chances. Ben Bishop equal to the task, including making a huge save on Kyle Okposo on a wrist shot. He is in alone. There is no one there to stop him. We were that close to being up 2-0. Ben Bishop equal to the task. Most of the second period was a major grind here for both teams. There's a lot of hitting, and getting towards the end of the period, the chances absolutely dry up. These guys both lock down physically, and the chances almost disappear. Brock Nelson takes a tripping penalty, which actually opens up a shorthanded chance for Calvin DeHaan, which was a good chance. Ben Bishop equal to the task there. And then a power play chance for Nikita Kucherov, turned away by Thomas Greiss. The Isles start pushing here early in the third period after 2 consecutive misses by the Lightning. They get 8 attempts off of 5 thrown hits. And again, physicality, breeding opportunity, breeding offense. The Islanders with that push, 8 shot attempts towards the net. Ben Bishop stands tall. He holds on for his team. Ben Bishop really was the story in this game because it kept Tampa Bay in it, and Tampa Bay takes the opportunity when it's presented to them. 7:49 into the third period, the Lightning score and tie this game. It's Nikita Kucherov with his playoff leading 8th goal of the playoffs. Tyler Johnson draws the only assist. A beautiful forecheck by the Lightning. Johnson gets the puck in behind the net, sends it out to about the face-off dot. Kucherov sends a wrist shot on net. I think Thomas Greiss most of the time would like to have this puck back. It's not a weak goal, but it's a goal that gets there because of a lack of technique by Greiss in net. And, I think it's one that he'd like to have back. But in any case, Tampa Bay has tied the game. The Islanders, they remain physical. They played very physical throughout the entire game, trying to wear the Lightning down. Casey Cizikas lays out Matt Carl, a really good hit on Carl, finally returning to action after missing a couple of games. The Islanders get the next couple of chances off of that big hit and then go on an absolute hitting spree. In the last 5 minutes of this game, they out-hit the Lightning 7-2, and you would think that's going to bode really good things for them. Ben Bishop stepping up to the plate again, keeping a tipped shot by Nikolai Kulemin, keeping that out in the last 15 seconds of the third period, and the Islanders miss out by just that much, basically having a 2-on-0. Like, there was nobody back for the Lightning, so it essentially would have been a 2-on-0 if they would have had a little bit more perspective on where they were relative to the Lightning players, but that doesn't happen. Bishop keeps it out. We are going to overtime. In the overtime period, Kyle Okposo gets high-sticked. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. He gets high-sticked. The referees miss it completely, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's a bad call. It's a missed call. And the refs even admitted to the Islanders coaching staff, like, look, we just missed it. We didn't see it. Victor Hedman gets down. He blocks a shot in early overtime, and the Islanders barely touch the puck again. A minute 34 into the overtime period, so it was very quick. The Lightning score the game-winning goal. It's Jason Garrison. Surprisingly, his first goal of these playoffs. Schuster and Palat drawing the assists, and it's just a one-timer from the point. It's a big shot. Calvin DeHaan, what are you doing? Calvin DeHaan gets literally just crouched down in front of Thomas Greiss. That is like the worst possible screen that you can have. That's the game winner. It beats him because he has no idea where this puck is, no idea how to find it, and that's it. I mean, that's it. Game over right there. So Calvin DeHaan, he goofed up. He done goofed up in a big bad way. Cost his team the game on that bad screen. The Lightning now have a commanding 3-1 series lead, and they're headed back home for Game 5. I want to take this opportunity to apologize one more time, and publicly and on, it's recorded on the podcast, apologize to my friend Jeff Mosier. Jeff was supposed to be on the podcast today, and we just couldn't figure out how the audio was not working. The capture software that I use, for whatever reason, was picking up my end of the audio, was not picking up Jeff's. So I owe Jeff screen time on a future episode of the podcast. Hopefully coming up sometime soon, we can get those issues figured out. Only major piece of news in the league overnight or yesterday was that the award nominees for the Ted Lindsay Award were named by the league. This is the most outstanding player as voted by the players, members of the NHLPA. Your nominees this year are Washington's Braden Holtby, Dallas's Jamie Benn, as well as Chicago's Patrick Kane. Now, Kane is the interesting case here because an American-born player has never won this award. Kane could be the first since 1971 when the award was inaugurated, could be the first American to win this award. He's going to get a lot of votes. Honestly, all three of these guys are going to get a lot of votes. If it's up to me, I think it's Braden Holtby. I understand that Patrick Kane was the only 100-point scorer in the league this year, and that should be celebrated. And I think it is being celebrated. To me, I think Braden Holtby was the MVP of the NHL this year. The season that he had, the season that the Capitals had, they were a great scoring team throughout the regular season, so their goaltending didn't have to be spectacular. Their goaltending, by and large, was spectacular. And in these playoffs where their offense has kind of dried up a little bit, Holtby has been fantastic, except for, the last sort of couple of games. But I think this goes to Braden Holtby. Who do you guys like for the Ted Lindsay Award? And later today, the Hart Trophy nominees get announced, so I can't wait to talk about them on tomorrow's episode. So we've got 3 games that we're going to tee up in the league tonight. It's games 5 of 3 different series. St. Louis and Dallas is where we're going to start. This series tied up at 2 games apiece. after Dallas won Game 4. Game begins at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's available on Sportsnet in Canada as well as NBC in the United States. Brian Elliott, Kari Lehtonen are going to be your goaltending matchup here. It looks like Kari Lehtonen has won the net for the Stars. Of note for Dallas, Tyler Seguin and Patrick Eaves unlikely to play in Game 5. Even though it is at home, they are both unlikely. For St. Louis, you could see Steve Ott slide back into the lineup here. The Blues looking for a little bit more sandpaper, especially through their forwards. So you may see Steve Ott get back in this series. Patrick Sharp was a guy that found his groove here in Game 4. 7 shots on goal, which I believe was his most of the playoffs, and scoring his first points since Game 6 of the Minnesota series. So he's been ice cold in this series, finally found his groove in Game 4 with a couple of pivotal points. And I'm pointing the finger straight at the St. Louis defensive core. In Game 4, their numbers as a unit, they were -2, they did not register any points, and they had just 5 shots on goal. They, as a unit, need to be better. St. Louis generates so much of their offense from their blue liners. Kevin Shattenkirk, Alex Pietrangelo, Colton Parayko, who I've talked about multiple times on the podcast. St. Louis's back end needs to be better in order for them to take the advantage back in this series. Right now, the advantage kind of sits with Dallas. I like St. Louis to do that, even though they are hitting the road, going back to Dallas here for Game 5. I like St. Louis to win Game 5 by a score of 4-2. I think that fourth goal is an empty netter. I like St. Louis to take a 3-2 series lead back home for Game 6. Second game of the day sees the Pittsburgh Penguins hit the road into Washington for Game 5 against the Capitals. Pittsburgh leads this series 3-1. They've got a chance to close it out tonight. 7:15 p.m. Eastern is your start time, which means puck drop will be probably around 7:30. Available on CBC in Canada as well as NBC in the United States. Matt Murray, Braden Holtby, they're going to be your goaltending matchup for sure. And I have to ask, we talked about Braden Holtby and what a great season that he had, except for the last couple of games, which he hasn't been particularly great. I mean, look, he hasn't been great by Braden Holtby standards. He's a victim of very high expectations in this case. I have to ask the question about whether fatigue has kind of set in for Holtby and whether that's maybe one of the issues here. His last 3 games, he hasn't won any of them. He's 0-3. He's given up 8 goals on 83 shots. Now look, that's still a .904 save percentage. Anytime you're in the 900s, you're doing something right as a goaltender. But when you look at the other end of the ice and you look what Matt Murray is doing with a larger workload, and, I guess you can't blame Holtby for kind of thinking like, oh, Jesus, what's a guy have to do, right? What have you done for me lately? Matt Murray, in that same span, the last 3 games of this series, all Pittsburgh wins. He is 3-0. He's only given up 5 goals against on 104 shots. Fewer goals against, much larger workload. A .952 save percentage. Now, if you're the Penguins, you might want to consider tightening up on defense a little bit. Just a little bit. Because giving up 104 shots, giving up 35 shots a game, you might want to reconsider. I don't think that's a great way for continued success against the Washington Capitals. Then again, they've won the last 3 games, so who am I to talk? And speaking of winning those last 3 games, they've been winning without Sidney Crosby, basically. I mean, he's been in there, he's been playing, he's been on the ice, and he's been drawing attention, as he should. But in this series, Sid only has 1 point. And he got it in the last game. His first point of the series was in Game 4. And he's only got 7 shots on goal. 7 shots in 4 games. I mean, he is not winning this Crosby versus Ovechkin much hyped matchup. Whereas, Ovechkin is at least doing something. He needs to be doing more, but he's doing something. Whereas Sid is kind of just out there. And he had a really good first round, too, so I don't know what the issue is. I mean, maybe Washington's just that much better of a team defensively on Sid specifically. Who knows. But in any case, I'd like to see more from Sidney Crosby, but hey, the Pens are winning without him, so whatever. I think the Caps hold on tonight at home. I think they send this thing back to Game 6 in Pittsburgh. I like Washington tonight by a score of 3-2. Maybe it goes to overtime, who knows, but I like Washington 3-2. And your late game tonight sees the Nashville Predators in San Jose taking on the Sharks. This series tied up at 2 games apiece, begins at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, available on CBC in Canada, as well as NBCSN in the United States. Pekka Rinne and Martin Jones will be your goaltending matchup, and how can these two teams follow up what was, as I said on, I think it was yesterday's show, one of the best games of all time. Like, this was one of my favorite games, one of the best games that I've ever seen live. Like, to watch it live was just like, oh my god, these overtime periods are just draining from my house. I can't imagine what it was like for anybody in that building or actual fans, like within the fan base of either of these teams. This goaltending matchup has been an absolute treat to watch. I mean, Pekka Rinne and Martin Jones, you feel like Martin Jones has been on this really consistent level the whole time, whereas Pekka Rinne has gotten better and better and better, and now they've kind of met in the middle here, and it'll be interesting to see which one of the two of them really takes off and takes control of this series. I mean, it's been awesome. It's been great to watch. It's been so much fun, especially for fans of goaltending, which clearly I am. And as far as I'm concerned, it's going to be one of these two back ends that are going to decide this series. And I'm not just talking about the goaltending, I'm talking more specifically about the D-cores, the defensive cores for both of these teams. They're so pivotal in generating the team's offenses. Here are their numbers from Game 4, and they're ridiculous. We're talking about just the defensemen. In Game 4, that triple overtime thriller, they combined for 10 points and 33 shots on goal. These are defensemen. 10 points and 33 shots on goal. Unbelievable. It's just amazing. And I think whichever one of these two defensive cores are the ones that can step up and really grab a hold of this series, whoever does that first is going to be the team. And the team, well, it's going to be the team that wins the game, and they're going to be the team that wins the series. Tonight, I like the Sharks on home ice. I like them by a score of 4-2, same as in the other Western Conference game tonight. I like the Sharks 4-2. The fourth goal is probably an empty netter. I think it's going to be another just spectacular offensive game. Amazing goaltending. It's the expectations that I have now for this series. That's what I expect to see tonight, and I like the Sharks to go over. And just like that, folks, lightning fast, this episode is over. That's Saturday, May 7th. That is the Saturday edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. Again, I apologize one more time to my friend Jeff Mosier for not being able to get him on the podcast today. We're going to rectify that situation here in the coming days. I got some of my tech experts on it, so we're going to get that figured out. And we'll have Jeff on. Might try to get Jeff on more than once, just as kind of a give back for making him get up so early this morning and kind of wasting the guy's time. I feel bad about it. That's it for me. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Enjoy your trio of games tonight. We'll talk again on Sunday.